All right, good evening everybody and welcome to Canadian University Shooting Federation's first ever webinar on rimfire rifles. This episode is sponsored by Vortex Optics. They've generously given us a scope to give away at the end of this episode, so you'll figure out how to get to that in a little bit. Canadian University Shooting Federation, we are an organization that organizes shooting clubs on campuses across Canada. So we started in 2018 with 2 clubs. Now we're up to 20, probably a bit more than 20 now, and we stretch from coast to coast. We're all volunteer run, and we depend on our sponsors to help us get young students shooting. So the sponsors for the Canadian University Shooting Federation are Cabela's Outdoors Fund. They're our headline sponsor. We're also sponsored by Vortex Optics, who has sponsored this episode. Stittsville Shooting Ranges, they're a great partner out of Ottawa. We did Mapleseed there this spring. They support our shooting clubs in Ottawa, and Beretta. So tonight we've got some presenters. We're going to be talking about rimfire rifles, and I'll introduce myself. My name's Travis. I'm the programs director for the Canadian University Shooting Federation. So I'm in charge of running events, and we do clinics, we do leagues, we do all sorts of different types of events to get students out shooting. And we want to get them shooting to give them experience, make them feel safe with firearms. And yeah, we have some rifle competitions, we have shotgun tournaments, and all the events come out of the programs department. Next up, we've got Kelly.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kelly Malonson. I'm with Project Mapleseed. I'm one of the founders and directors for Project Mapleseed. I'm also with the CCFR. I do their women's programs, and I'm also on the Cusf Women's Program Committee as well. And finally, I'm Slamfire Radio host as well. So a podcast that is the longest running pro-gun podcast in Canada. Come listen to
Everybody should
Thursdays.
check that out. Yes. Thursday nights, what time?
Thursdays at 7 o'clock EST. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Next we have Rick.
Hey everybody, Rick Kydex, or Rick Antonio on the interwebs is my my nom de guerre, I guess. One of the co-founders of Project Mapleseed, and the I'm the founders of CRPS, ORPS, and a few other series that we're launching this year. Happy to be here. Looking forward to watching the knowledge bombs drop.
We're happy to have you. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for the invite.
We really appreciate it. Yeah.
No worries.
Next, we've got Matt.
Yeah, hey everyone, my name is Matt, and I've been shooting the precision rimfire matches for just over a year now. I have a small YouTube channel called Womfat, and I actually originally just started posting content, to kind of document it for myself. And I realized a lot of new shooters kind of benefited from the content. So I have a lot of videos kind of tailored towards that. And this year I'm also helping Rick with the CRPS and kind of doing some behind the scenes stuff, helping with the new shooter development program. And I'm also now a sponsored Athlon shooter. They provided me with a pretty sweet scope to try and use this year.
Nice.
That's fantastic. And you say you have a small YouTube channel. I think that you undersell yourself a little bit. I think your YouTube channel is fantastic. There's lots of really good resources on there. So just go to YouTube and look up Womfat to check that out. There's a lot of videos on there and a lot of really good information.
Thanks. Awesome.
Yeah. So thank you for all the presenters tonight for coming out. I really appreciate the time. These guys are, and ladies are, probably the best in the field that we're going to be talking about tonight in our country. I'm really happy that they could join us. So I mentioned we're going to be doing some giveaways tonight. So throughout the webinar, we're going to be giving away a few prizes. There's going to be some small prizes. We'll have some swag bags, and we'll have a Project Mapleseed giveaway. To be eligible for that, you have to attend the entire webinar, and you have to reside in Canada. The other thing we're giving away, our main prize tonight, is our Vortex Diamondback tactical scope, 6 to 24 by 50. And To be eligible for that, you have to attend the webinar, you have to reside in Canada, and you have to be a CUSF member. So your membership has to be purchased before 9 p.m. tonight. You have 54 minutes to go do that. To become a member, you can go to shop.cusf.ca, select the membership that you want, whether you're a student or just part of the general public. So again, we need to thank Vortex for providing this scope to give away. It's very generous. They support shooters in Canada. We can't say enough good things about them. It's a really, really great scope, and it's perfect for the stuff we're going to be talking about tonight. Rick, whenever you're running your events, how many Vortex Diamondback tacticals do you see?
Vortex Diamondback tacticals are probably the #1 optic in the series by a long stretch. I would say that over 50% of the competitors are running Vortex Diamondbacks.
That's awesome.
They're solid.
So,
they're solid.
Yeah, they're great. They have a fantastic warranty. No questions asked warranty. That's always one thing I look for in a scope. And yeah, great optics for what we're going to be discussing tonight. So again, you have to be a CUSF member to be eligible to win that scope. How can you participate in this webinar? We have a question box at the bottom. If you want to ask any questions at any point, I'm going to be monitoring that. So I'll bring up some questions as we go. I encourage you anytime, ask a question. I will do my best to get to it. And we can move on. Tonight, so far, we have 37 people. So your chances of winning are high, 1 in 37. So whenever we're looking at rimfire rifles, we want to make sure they fit us properly. So Kelly, I think you can talk about why is it important that your rifle fit you properly?
Okay, so one of the things that we do at Project Mapleseed is we fit your rifle to you, and we do that pretty much right from the beginning. And the reason is because if you actually have your rifle that's fitted to you, it means that you're going to have consistency, repeatability, and accuracy, and that's what marksmanship is all about. Your rifle should fit you in that way. It feels part of you, and it also means that you're going to hit what you're actually aiming for, or aiming at. So that's really, really, really important. You can do it in a few different ways. At Project Mapleseed, we do it so that it's non-permanent, and we're not going to harm your rifle. We use a few things, like we use this stuff here, which you can get at any tack store or on Amazon or anything like that. That's vet wrap, and we actually use things like foam. This is foam that I've taken off of one of our rifles. You can go into the hardware store and get the foam that they do for the insulation for pipes, and it's perfect actually because it's already curved and it has a slit down the middle of it, and you can just actually fit that over your stock. Some other things that are a little bit more permanent, well, sorry, not more permanent, neoprene sleeves. You can actually buy cheek adjustments as well, but you can actually, so over here I have over here, this is a stock that basically your basic stock. You can change that out, and by the way, all of the rifles that we have are all, obviously it has a chamber plug in it, so it's empty. You can actually change it out and put something that has the adjustment on it already, or you can actually do specifically change out your stock. So things like, for example, I have a Magpul Hunter X22 that is like Lego. I'll show you that. I'm just actually showing you some of the options that are available, and then I'll show you actually how to do an adjustment. So, and then you also have other things like MDT chassis, which you actually can change out the cheek weld as well as the length of pull. So what we're doing is we're going to fit the rifle to you. So what we want to do, normally when when a rifle comes to you, it comes just without an optic on it and without any of the rings. And so what that means is that the rifle's meant to be shot with iron sights. Once you actually add the rings and the scope, that means that your sight alignment is going to be off, or your fit's going to be off. So what we ask you to do is to get down into a position. Typically we'll fit people in the prone position, and the reason is, one, that's the position that they're going to actually be shooting in the most for our events. However, it's also the most stable as well. So we want you to actually, again, marksmanship and precision is all about that. So we actually fit you in the prone position. What we do is actually ask you to bring the rifle up to your shoulder. So I'm going to get you to do that. The other thing we're going to get you to do is actually, we call it a turkey neck, but what that means is to stretch out your neck and then lay your cheek. And everybody, what we see on the line, Rick, raise your hand or shake your head. Yes. How many times do we see people that do cheek welds that are actually chin welds and floating stocks and different things like that? So your cheek weld is going to be actually the cheek, your bone, your cheeky flesh part there. You're actually going to rest it on your stock. And we're going to ask you to close your eyes, stretch out your head, and open your eyes. And if you can see through your scope, fantastic. It means that you actually have a good cheek weld. If you don't, then we're going to actually take some of that foam, we're going to place it on top, and then we're going to take that vet wrap, and we're going to wrap it around.
Hey, Kelly, how much of your head weight should be on that stock?
So remember last night, Rick, when you went to bed?
Yes.
Did you think about putting all that pressure on your pillow?
No, I just fell asleep.
Exactly. That's going to be the same amount of weight that you're going to be putting on your stock because you don't want to use muscle and you don't want to use tension or anything like that. So it's just going to stretch out, drop your cheek on, open your eyes. Oh, look, I can see through my scope now. Perfect. The other thing that we want to check is we want to check the length of pull. And the length of pull means that we want to make sure that you have good eye relief. So if you have shadowing all the way around, that means that your head might actually be a little too forward. You might want to pull it back. We ask you to move your head back and forth, and the reason is so that you can get a nice, crisp, clear picture. So on the screen you have here, this is what you have optimal sighted alignment, the first one. The second one is where we say the eye relief. That means that you're probably too close to your scope. You're going to want to move back. That means like with this one here, you can actually move your stock back, okay, and you have a better eye relief, and it just fell off. But that's a better length of pull, okay? You'll see that you have your eyes too far to the left or too far to the right. And what that means is your head's not in alignment with your scope. Maybe you have put on some foam and the foam's actually push your cheek over, roll that foam back over, and then check it again. And it should be crisp, clear, and all the way around. And again, so you have a shadowing on the bottom or shadowing on the top. That means you've actually added too much foam or not enough foam, and you can take it off or put it back up, put more on. You can do more permanent solutions as well. You can Kydex as well if you would like to do a Kydex cheek riser, and you can do the adjustments as well. Now, the only thing is if you have shadowing all the way around and you're not able to actually adjust back and forth, or you're not able to put foam on the back, we can't actually take a stock and saw it off, but we can actually build up. So, but we can work with shadowing all the way around if we really need it, as long as it's equal all the way around. So basically, length of pull, just move your head back and forth, get a nice crisp, clear picture. No shadowing to one side or the other, and then actually, as I said, make sure that your cheek is nice and on the stock, and it's the same amount of weight as you went to bed last night with your pillow. So that's it.
You mentioned like a Kydex Riser. Are there any recommendations that you would have for something like that? Because those are more permanent. You have to drill through your stock.
Well, funny that you mentioned that. Rick actually has a YouTube video on how to do one. So if Rick, do you want to tell them where they can find that?
Yeah, if you go to, is it on Mapleseed? It is, right?
Yeah, it is.
So if you search Project Mapleseed, there's a bunch of videos there for getting the right fit and also making your own Kydex cheek riser. And actually you could just get Kydex from Amazon or any local store and just use a heat gun to melt it, cut it roughly the shape. And it doesn't have to be permanent. You don't have to drill. You can actually use adhesive Velcro strips.
Mm-hmm.
So you put the soft side on your stock and then the hook side on the inside of the riser, and you can just keep moving it around until it fits just right for you. So the big thing is just make a hoop, and then slide it over your rifle. Pretty straightforward.
We got one comment from Vince. You can use pipe foam insulation as well.
Yeah, that's what this is actually.
Yep. And several yoga mats have disappeared from my house and ended up spliced into 3-inch pieces and scattered across Canada in the last 3 years. So that's another one. They're $20 for like a big yoga mat. So get
Right.
the 6 mil or the 3 mil.
And it's perfect,
Perfect.
because the thinner stuff you can actually keep adding and adding and adding and adding until you get the
Yeah.
perfect height. So if you have really thick foam, it's really hard to squish it down.
Yeah. And for new shooters, I mean, people think we're droning on about getting the right fit, but the right fit is so key
It's
to
perfect.
consistency.
Yeah.
Because if you change, you know, the weighting on that rifle, that's going to behave differently, which means your groups are going to open up. So if you don't have a solid 100% consistent cheek weld on that rifle, your group sizes are just not gonna show up. You can't make good groups with a bad fit. It's 100%. So
Probably one of the most important things, first thing you should do, I would think, once you get a rifle, make sure it fits.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it doesn't, like, as I said, we actually is non-permanent as cheap, but if you can actually, you can spend up to, you know, Matt has a rifle there that you can adjust the cheek riser and also the length of pull as well. And it's just, you know, the chassis a little bit more expensive than a piece of foam
Yeah.
and some wrap.
I mean,
So,
I love the vet wrap. Several of my rifles still have it. They've lasted years, and they're
Yeah.
softer, and they're not cold like Kydex is or aluminum.
Yeah.
And they never rub me raw. It's always soft on my cheeks.
I will say though, something nice about having something like this where it's just simply just, you know, loosen this and you can adjust this super quick as if you're sharing a rifle. Like this is technically my wife's chassis. So if we're switching the rifle between us, my cheekbones are lower than hers. So you gotta kind of, you know, adjust every time. So it's a lot easier than having to unwrap something and redo it.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. So one other question, the foam and vet wrap does not harm any wood finishes. It's on there.
Correct.
So such a short time at Mapleseed, there shouldn't be any concerns about that.
Yep. No, it doesn't actually.
I've had mine for years, and they don't damage. There's no adhesive,
Mhm.
so you can take it off and it's pristine.
One other question, I thought length of pull was your arm position to the trigger, Jackie. So I think that's normally where you take the rifle, and your elbow and your finger should line up with the trigger. That's really how you measure your length of pull.
Right.
Yeah. The other way is to, so for bolt action rifles, you'll shoulder it and you'll stand up and you'll try and cycle it. If you have to stretch to cycle it, then it's too long for you. That's typically how you'll know it's too long, which is always my problem.
I think that question may have been getting confused. So length of pull is this dimension here, but your cheek height here is your comb height is what it's called. You're adjusting your comb height there. But in terms of looking through your scope, both your comb height as well as your length of pull is important to get a proper sight picture.
Right.
Okay, we'll move on. That's all really good information. So your other must-have rifle skills, cheek weld. So Rick, whenever you look at the picture that is in this presentation, how do you tell that he has a good cheek weld, and what does it do for you when you're shooting?
Yeah, again, so if you look at the interface, the buttstock between the cheek and the shooter's cheek, how it's kind of folded over, kind of the chipmunk cheek is what we'll call it. That ridge of skin is basically showing you that you've got good solid contact. And again, as we said, 100% of your weight should be on that stock. If you have to raise your head even slightly just through that scope, what you're doing is you're introducing variability from shot to shot. And that's no go. I mean, you'll be able to make the shot, but you're giving up consistency. So that's what we look for. That dead weight on the cheek riser of the rifle.
Consistency is the name of the game.
Absolutely, and you can only get that with good fit.
Yep. So next, trigger pull. Kelly, whenever you're looking at somebody who is attending a Mapleseed event, what are some of the things you look for whenever you're showing them the proper way to pull the trigger?
So if you look at the picture that we've included in there, person when they're actually got it, what we want you to do is actually have the middle pad of your finger and having that only on the trigger itself. What we typically see, see people with their hand wrapped around their stock. Try and roll it over so that you'll be able to pull it straight back as well. If you look at him, he's able to actually, it's showing his hand is actually not canted, and he has just the middle pad of his finger touching the trigger, and that's all. And he'll be able to pull that trigger straight back into, basically into his shoulder, so straight back. That's proper placement and proper trigger pull.
Yeah, the other thing to look at when, go ahead.
Or go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, the one of the most important things people have to understand about the trigger is it's the steering wheel to your rifle. How you apply that trigger and what direction affects which way your bullets are going to go. So the key thing there is pulling it straight back with the minimal amount of force to break the trigger. So one of the questions I ask is, if you are pulling on that trigger with 7 pounds of force and your rifle weighs only 5 pounds, where does the extra 2 pounds go? It goes to moving your rifle off target. Right? So the key thing there is practicing until you've got such a crisp break that there's no excess force being directed past that to pull the rifle offline. And there's a couple of different exercises we go through at Mapleseed to show you how to pull it straight back, and the effect of pulling it straight back but too fast or too quickly. You'll actually pull it to the left, or you'll pull it to the right, depending on whether you're a righty or a lefty. So it's very important. It's probably the most critical exercise you'll have to learn is a steady pull straight back to the point the trigger breaks and not an ounce more.
Yeah, that's really important too, because if you move your barrel 1 millimeter to the left when you pull the trigger, at 25 yards you might not see the difference, but at 300 it'll be a miss, right? So
yep, for sure.
Straight back, as close to 90 degrees as possible. And the other thing I heard at the Mapleseed clinics that talk about is dragging wood. Right?
Yeah.
So
if you notice on him, as I said, his thumb is over a bit, but it's actually, he's able to pull, you can see his hands straight up and down. But typically what we will see is people will reach over their stock, and that'll cant their hand like this. So if they're grabbing their stock, what'll happen is, I'll show it here on this stock here. Okay, so here, and there's no light between your finger and the trigger guard, and actually it's running across the stock. And as Rick just said, right, we don't want you to be influencing your barrel at all. And if you're actually dragging your hand when you're pulling your trigger, you're going to influence your barrel left or right. So as I said, you're going to take your thumb and you're going to roll it over, and as you can see, it straightens my finger right up, or my hand right up, and now there's light or air between my finger and the trigger guard and the trigger.
Perfect.
So yeah, so it's called dragging wood, and if you're out of Mapleseed and you're doing it, I'll come and yell at you.
In the nicest possible way.
I don't drag wood. You're always yelling at me still.
I know, but that's because I love you.
Thanks, sweetie.
So one question from Jordan: practicing trigger pull with rimfire, can that cause damage to your gun? So I guess the answer is it depends on the gun, or is it, are there some guns that are safe to do that with?
Yeah, there are some. You can get snap caps. So the 1022s are dry fire safe. A lot of the bolts, like the CZs, are not dry fire. What happens is you'll end up peening, the firing pin will end up peening the chamber, and you'll have rough extractions or damage as the bullet goes in. But what you can do is you can just, again, get snap caps, or I think it's a number 8 drywall plug, one of those little yellow ones that you insert. I think those will fit into the chamber. So if
well,
you don't have
at the Mapleseed, they also just gave us a clicky pen, and you can kind of practice on a clicky pen even.
Yeah.
Your trigger trainer.
Yeah,
Trigger trainer.
And if you have a center fire, 99% of modern center fires can be dry fired. You can use that for trigger practice.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah, and it's key. Again, that's why people spend the money on aftermarket triggers, to minimize the amount of force you're applying that could potentially move the rifle offline, even minutely, like you said, Travis.
Yep. So we'll move on to the next one. Another must-have rifle skills, your natural point of aim. This is, I feel like this is one of the more important things to learn. And at your Mapleseed clinic, yeah, it is the secret sauce. So Rick, if you had to explain natural point of aim to somebody, how would you do that?
So the easiest way is if you just take your 2 hands, put them together and make a finger gun, put it straight out in front of you. That's your natural point of aim, right? That's natural point of aim. If I want to point to my left and I keep my head still and I point to the left, you can feel that tension in your shoulder, right? You relax, what happens is your body automatically pulls it backward. And that's what you're doing is you're building up muscle tension. So if you're aiming your rifle with your hands instead of repositioning, you're actually introducing some tension that every time the shot is fired, it's going to pull. That tension is going to pull it offline back to its natural point of aim. So by picking up and realigning the whole body toward your target, you're obtaining your natural point of aim and minimizing any sort of variability based on body or skeletal tension that you've built artificially by twisting the barrel. That's natural point of aim in a nutshell.
You want your bones to support you, right? Your bones don't move, they don't get tired. Muscles get tired.
Yeah. Basically,
right?
it's you want to be completely at rest towards your target. There should be no tension at all in your body when you're aligned to the target with your rifle. So you're not using your hands or using your body placement.
So when you're in the prone position, how's the best way to find your natural point of aim?
Well, the easiest way is just to relax. Like once you're in your position, just close your eyes, relax behind the gun, take a couple of deep breaths. Just imagine your arms relaxing, and then slowly open your eyes and see where you are. If you are to the right of the target, what you want to do is you want to use your elbows as the pivot point, and you'll move the rear of your body to the right to move to the left, or to the left to move to the right. So picking, like you said here, picking up from the center where your belt buckle would be, pick that up and move it to the left to pivot your body to the right, and then place it down. And again, get that relaxation. A lot of people, when they get under pressure, they'll just automatically move because that's what our bodies have been trained to do all their lives. If I want to see something quickly, I'll move it over. But what you want to do is you want to actually pivot your body over and then place it down. And it's probably the toughest. Under pressure is the first skill that falls apart.
Goes out the window.
Yeah. And it's something that's easy to practice at home too, right?
Sorry?
Yeah.
It's something that's easy to practice at home. So you can put a target on the wall in your basement and, go prone and practice your natural point of aim. And I guess the other thing is elevation adjustment up and down. That's just moving your feet back and forth, right? And try and stretch your legs out as much as you can or bring them closer to you.
Yeah, the key thing is to shoot relaxed, completely in neutral, relaxed position. If there's any sort of tension, it's going to be hard to replicate that tension. But a relaxed body is always relaxed, and that's going to be more consistent than a tense body or partially tense body. So it's important to try to find that Zen-like state where everything is the same as it was the previous shot.
One of the things that
sorry, go ahead. Go.
I was just going to say, one of the things that we find helpful is when we do this, we use a laser, and it gives you immediate feedback as well. So if you were talking about doing this at home, you can get a cheap laser pointer, put it onto a rifle stock or onto your rifle, and then actually practice it. And you can move and shift with that laser on the wall, and it'll show you what you're doing with your body and how it reacts. Because a lot of people actually can't get it's kind of like backing up a trailer, It's opposite. It's hard to explain, but once you get it, you get it. Yeah.
We got a comment from Doug. NPOA is even more crucial at CRPS. Everything's magnified. That's why I recommend everybody take a Project Mapleseed event.
There you go. Thanks,
so
Doug.
when you're kneeling to adjust, you adjust with your back foot. Yep. When you're sitting, how is that different?
So, okay, when you're kneeling, your pivot point is your front foot, and you're moving your back foot left, right, or back forward. When you're sitting, we lovingly call it the two-cheek snake. What it is your butt cheeks are moving left or right. Okay. Or if you need to move elevation, you're going to be moving you bring your knees in or further apart if you're cross-legged, or if you actually have you're doing an oblique position. If you're down a hill or whatever, you're either going to move your bum back and forth, or you're actually going to move your feet back and forth. It just depends on the position that you've actually have assumed. So, yeah.
And last one, oops, sorry, I went too far. Standing, kind of the same thing, right? You're moving the position of your back foot to adjust your natural point of aim.
Yep, same thing as kneeling.
All right, the other must-have rifle skills, using a sling. Kelly, you have your demo stock. Maybe you can show us the two ways we
Okay.
do that. Yeah.
So, okay. So I've set up, you have two different slings that we teach you. We teach you a hasty sling, which you're going to be using in a standing position. It's a 2-point sling. Okay, it's already set up. So when you actually, when you're getting into your hasty sling, so slings actually can use to actually build marksmanship, steady. It can stabilize your rifle and that as well. So with a hasty sling, the way that we do it, what we do is we actually, so you have your 2 points connected, one at the front, one at the back, and we measure it to see if it's going to fit. Sorry about that, my chamber flag just fell out. What we do is a little bit of a hang 10 between the sling itself, and we do it at the bottom of the trigger guard. I usually do about a hang 10.5. I know that's what I need. So to get into it, it's a little bit, I can get into it quite quickly, but I'm going to explain it. I'm going to actually, so I'm right-handed. My target is, I'm standing 9 degrees index to the target. I'm going to reach my support side hand through, and I actually pull the rifle up into my armpit. And what I'm going to be doing is wrapping my hand around. I don't know, maybe I should stand back a little bit so you can see. And I'm gripping the forestock with my support side hand. And then I'm going to take my trigger side hand and I'm going to pull it down. And what this does is it creates tension onto the sling itself. Then I'm going to rock it up to my shoulder. And now I'm ready to actually shoot. And the sling itself is nice and tight, comes across my chest as well, and I can support it. See my hand over here. Rifle can rest and that, and then I can actually resume my shooting stance, take a couple of shots, rest again. So that's the hasty sling. It's actually quite quick to get into once you actually learn it. And that's that. And then we also have actually another sling that we teach you. And it's a prone, it's either in the prone or the kneeling position. It's called a loop sling.
Rifle competition.
And actually, I'll use a different rifle because I don't want to take that off. So when you're creating a loop sling, you only have the 1 point of contact at the front, and then you actually, so you'll disconnect it from the butt of the rifle. What you'll do is, so the slings that we recommend, you can actually use the M1 Garand sling, or you can actually, we have on Project Mapleseed, we have a video on how to make your own ghetto sling if you want as well. Anyways, so you disconnect it and you actually feed the fabric up through the H buckle. And it's called an H buckle because it actually literally looks like an H. And what you're doing is you're creating a loop. So as you can see, loop. You're going to let it dangle down. And you're going to take your support side hand. So again, I'm right-handed, so I'm putting it up over my massive bicep on my left-hand side. And it's over my bicep. It's pretty much up into my armpit, and then I actually pull it down. And what it's doing is creating a self-tightening loop. You notice that the equipment, so this is actually a quick disconnect. It's on the outside or a swivel. I'm gonna take my hand. This is my support side hand. I'm gonna wrap it around the sling. So I'm creating a hand sandwich. So you got your sling, your hand, and the stock, okay? And then I'm gonna bring it up. And that's a loop sling. And it's not going to slide down at all, self-tightening. If I need to make an adjustment at the front, I just flip on the keeper, lengthen it out, put the keeper back up, and I'm ready to shoot. So this is either in prone or in the kneeling position. These are the ones that we actually suggest for that, but you can use either or sling for any of the positions that are at Project Mapleseed or CRPS or where we are. So those are the two ones that we were actually going to teach you.
So one question we have from Matthew, how often are slings used in CRPS and RPS? Matt, what would you have to say about that?
So I just shot an ORPS on Sunday, And RPS always guarantee one offhand stage. So if you use a sling for an offhand stage, you're guaranteed to use it for one stage per ORPS match. CRPS matches are a little bit more open-ended, but the CRPS matches I've been to have had at least one offhand stage as well. So I would say every time you go to an ORPS or CRPS, if you have to bring it along, because it's going to help you greatly. And I have a video from just this past Sunday's match. We had 2 offhand stages. The first one, like what Rick was saying, in the moment you forget everything and MPOA goes out the window. So I like totally bombed that stage. And then the second one, I said, okay, I have to prove to myself that I'm still a rifleman. And I just remembered everything I learned at Mapleseed, and I cleaned it. So I got 10 points out of 10 available hits. So,
Nice.
yeah.
There will always be a offhand stage at a CRPS or ORPS. I guarantee it. I know the guy.
Yeah.
What's the stage
honestly,
called?
The stage was called Up and Down, I think.
Oh, I thought it was Have You Taken Your Mapleseed Yacht?
Oh, they do name it that sometimes. Funny, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do highly recommend the Mapleseed course. Even if you just shoot CRPS, it's very beneficial. Not just for offhand stages, for everything.
There's so much that you'll learn.
Yeah.
Or you'll be exposed to.
Mhm.
By the 4th time you come, you'll learn it.
So
For those
one of
that
the
don't know what ORPS and CRPS are, we'll get to that in a few slides.
So one of the things I wanted everybody to let everybody know is that people are always asking us about slings and where they can get them. If you're going to mapleseedrifleman.com, which is our website, funny enough, we were just talking about it today. We have an order of slings that are just being shipped to us currently, so they'll be on there soon. But you can also get slings at I think Marstar carries them, Amazon carries them, but they're very limited and few. But just watch for the ones that are going to be on our website soon.
And I think you have a video on Project Mapleseed about how to make your own sling as well. I think the Amazon special, so you can do that as well if interested. Matt, is there any slings you wouldn't recommend?
So I know what you're getting at. So I originally bought a Magpul. I think it's the RLS. It stands for Rifleman Loop Sling. And the name would suggest it's great for Mapleseed. And it does work. But I find it's a little bit there's too many buckles and straps and random things hanging off it. It's a little bit more complicated than you really need, because these loop slings or hasty slings you need are pretty simple in design. So you really don't need to, shell out the money for something super fancy. I think the Mapleseed sling is like 20 bucks or something.
Yeah.
Around there.
I don't know.
20, 25?
I don't know. Yeah.
It hasn't changed since the first year.
Yeah, you don't need anything too fancy.
The ghetto slings that we actually, and I keep saying it's ghetto, but it's basically that, and you can see it in our pictures here. So the one on top here is actually a Mapleseed sling. It's an M1 Grand sling. Down on the bottom there, it's and if you do go to Mapleseed, by the way, we actually have loaners. So you don't have to actually have a sling at that, but you'll want to get one afterwards. But these are ones that we've had made, and they are basically, I think it's like $3 or $4 to make the sling. So it's super cheap, and
Perfect.
Yeah.
We'll move on. So, Kelly, what can we learn? Well, we've talked a lot about Project Mapleseed. There are some, like you have listed here, the 3 ingredients to marksmanship. So whenever you go to a Mapleseed, I've had it explained to me many times that it's like drinking from a fire hose. But there are some basic things that everybody can take away from it. So what would those be whenever you're focusing on Project Mapleseed?
So when you go to a Project Mapleseed, it's all about marksmanship and actually building your skills. So we're going to, as I said, the 3 ingredients is proper positioning. So we're going to teach you how to get proper positioning and have that mental checklist when you're then standing or seated or kneeling and prone positions. And then the second ingredient is the 6 steps of firing a perfect shot. I like to say perfect shot because if you do only 5 of them, it's not going to be a perfect shot. But if you do all 6, it'll be perfect. The last one is the MPOA, which is a natural point of aim, which is the one that's easiest to talk about, but it's the hardest one for people to put into action. And it's because we actually, like, our body likes to fight everything. It just doesn't seem natural, but we have to work with our body. And if we're able to get that and you put all 3 of that together, then you're going to be a marksman. The other things that you're going to learn during an event is we're going to talk to you about scope adjustments and how to make those. We're going to talk to you about shot diagnostics, because guess what, Rick and Matt and I are not going to go to the range with you afterwards, and we'll teach you how to actually look at your groupings and to make some changes and what you need to do with that. And then also we're going to talk about rifle fit, and we do that actually right straight through from, right off the get-go in the morning. So yeah, it's a full day, and be prepared, because it's from, you start shooting right at 9 o'clock and you go to 5 o'clock but it's a real fun day. But you're right, it's like drinking from a fire hose, so there's a lot of information.
It's draining.
But it's fun.
Yeah.
It's also 90% chance gonna rain on a Mapleseed day.
Right.
Only Kelly's events.
Yes, okay.
Only Kelly's events.
So we've also had tornadoes, we've had floods.
Kelly's events.
Yeah, so we send out stuff beforehand. So just, bring rain gear, bring hip waders, canoe if you have one,
Yeah.
and bring a lunch.
Yeah, whenever I did the one in Ottawa this fall, we had just gotten a bunch of rain, and because I'm the left-handed shooter, they don't like me, and they made me lay in 2 inches of water all day. So you're shooting the conditions, whatever they are, and I can't recommend the course highly enough. You learn a lot, no matter what level of experience you are. They can accommodate you. You have loaner rifles for people who might not have a rifle as well, I think, right?
Yep, and we do that. So when you do register, if you need anything, just let us know, and we'll see about bringing that for you. So you do not have to have a PAL, which is the cool thing. You can actually come to the event. We want new shooters to come out and try the event. Yep. And you know what, we do have loaner rifles, and we can work with you. And as I said, if you need a sling, we have loaner slings. We have a trailer that we bring with us, and we got mats, different things like that. So you'll be pretty taken care of if you need it.
It actually helps to go without having shot before.
It does,
because
actually.
of all the bad habits your buddies teach you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
This is the way that there's no training scars, and you start fresh. I remember one person we were teaching in Campbell River. She had shot really well. She was taking notes. She was so into it, just listening. She was close to Rifleman. She was like 180, 190. And I asked her, so how many rounds have you shot? She goes, well, how many did we shoot today? And that was her first experience. Her brother had brought her over, and it was
That's
awesome.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and we've had first time shooters get their patch.
Yeah,
so it's not unheard of.
We had one guy.
What do you need to do to be a rifleman?
Sorry?
What do you need to do to be a rifleman? Like what is that?
So we'll do an MQT, which is a Mapleseed qualifying test. So in the morning, we teach you everything, those 3 ingredients, and then we let you loose in the afternoon where we do a Mapleseed qualifying test. And we usually do typically 3 to 4 of them, and all of them count, by the way. The Mapleseed qualifying test is based on the Army qualifying test. So you'll do standing, seated, kneeling, and then you'll also do prone stages, and they're timed. And then we throw all kinds of different things in there, like mag changes, and we'll get you to shift positions and different things like that. And you need a 210 score out of a possible 250. So in order to become
80% score.
Mm-hmm.
How many rounds do you need for the day from Jackie?
So typically we tell people to bring 350 rounds, and that's why a lot of people will shoot it with 22s, because 350 rounds of 22 is a lot cheaper than 308. So and basically, yeah, so we say bring 350 rounds because you will actually use almost that. So
nice. And Doug says we get sandstorms at Rick's CRPS events out west.
Yeah.
Mine's wet.
Medicine Hat in Tabor.
Yeah.
Rick's is dry.
Dry. Tumbleweed.
All right. So now we are going to give away an admission to a Project Mapleseed clinic. So again, have to be here to get it. I've got a list of everybody who registered right now. We have 46 out of the 100 people. So the way that I've done this is I have everybody's name in an Excel sheet, and there's a corresponding number. I just hit this random generating, and we will give away a Mapleseed to somebody who's here. If they're not here, we'll go till we find somebody who is. So first Number 74, who's that? Got Matthew Elderbrum.
Are you here,
And he
Matthew?
is here. So
Oh,
Matt
Matthew.
Elderbrum wins the Project Mapleseed event.
Where do you live, Matthew?
Well, yeah.
So
We'll get you
that's
in.
fantastic. And CUSF is paying for that that admission. And one thing I forgot to mention earlier is if you are a CUSF student, we have a partnership with Project Mapleseed to do training events, and we subsidize the cost of going to events. We want to get as many students out shooting as possible. Fantastic for training, doesn't matter your level of experience. We just want people to get out, so we could do it relatively affordably.
Can I ask
One
a
question from
about that?
Yep.
So if we have somebody that signs up for an event and attends and they're a Cusf student, what are they to do? Are they to contact you and tell you that they're actually have attended an event, or is it specific to Cusf events only?
Often we will try to run a Cusf event and we'll circulate that to the clubs. Hopefully it fills up. If not, Mapleseed clinics typically fill up in about 10 minutes once they're released to the public. So
Yeah.
the one we did in the fall, we had I think four students out of 10 of us were there. So Matt
One-on-one.
Elderbrum says he lives in Somerstown, Ontario, and thank you.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sweet.
So
Kelly's going
the
to be
other
the
question-
shoot boss.
yeah. The other
Congratulations.
question we have, target distances consistent or varied. They're at 25 meters. That's correct.
25 meters. But we
They're
make the
scaled.
targets really, really small.
Yeah. They're scaled to be able to shoot. What is it, 4 MOA?
Or MOA,
yeah,
so they're
yeah.
scaled. They're posted at 25, but they're scaled or out to, well, actually, we have one target that's scaled out to 500. So really small.
Nice. So one thing I'm going to talk about now, as I mentioned, part of the programs department, we like to run competitions. We had one ready to go for January, and then COVID killed it. So right now we have this sitting on the shelf, ready to go. Our date is to be determined, and Project Mapleseed has helped us out with this competition. So you'll recognize some of the targets if you go to a Project Mapleseed event. This competition is going to take place 25 meters. You can use any rifle, any sights, sling only, so no bipods, rests, or any other supports are allowed. You're going to have 3 different targets. You're going to have a standing target, it's 5 shots at that one. You're going to have a kneeling target, there's 3 shots at that one. And you're going to have 3 separate prone targets, 1 shot at each of them. And the amount of points are worth more for the prone, worth a little less for the sitting, and worth the least for the standing. For our CUSF members, if you have a membership, well, let me rephrase that. You need a CUSF membership to participate in our events. And with that, your entry is free. And then once you've shot your target, you scan it, take pictures of it, submit it to an email address, we score it, and we're going to keep track of all the scores. If you're not happy, if you're in first place and then your buddy comes and beats you and you want to buy additional entries, you can do that. So this will run over at least a month, maybe 2, and we'll have more information a little bit later. I'd like to do something really quick, just try something out. I have a poll that I'm going to launch, just asking if you're a student or not. It's just information to see how many of our participants are students. So if people can take that poll, let me know. So we have 75% of the people that have voted so far. We have 74% are no, 26% are yes, and yes for alumni. Nice, thanks, Doug. Okay, so we will close that poll. So we got, that's good information to have. So this is the target for the rifle competition. It's your standing target. And Kelly, if you had some tips for this target? What would you tell prospective shooters for this?
Okay, if you're shooting in the standing position, it's going to be the least stable position. So you know what, you're going to have some wobble. So don't fight it, just relax, relax into it. Take your time when you're actually doing it. Take a few shots and then take a breath, relax, come back up, reacquire your natural point of aim and take a couple more shots. And the reason is because you're going to shoot better and you're actually going to be more accurate. You'll hit all those V-bulls if you actually take your time, take a breath, take a couple of shots, and then just cycle through it.
Okay, so is there a pattern to the wobble, or is it completely random usually? Okay.
Some people actually, so when I said relax, don't fight the wobble, some people will actually induce a little bit more wobble, and it's called a controlled wobble, and they'll do figure eights. And so what will happen is you'll do a little bit of an exaggerated figure eight to actually work with the movement. And then when the center of that figure eight crosses over the center of your target, that's when you time your shot, or that's when you take your shot. So, yeah.
Would you suggest taking a break for this competition? You have 5 shots and there's no time limit. Would you suggest you take a break after every shot, or just once you start feeling your arm get tired?
I wouldn't. Yeah, typically I wouldn't do it after every shot. I'd do it after every 2 or 3 shots. So if you only got 5 shots, just take a couple of shots, then take a break, take a breath, and go back up. A couple more shots, and then finish her off.
And take a break, you just let your trigger arm drop, right? Or is it your support arm? Yeah, trigger arm.
So it's your trigger arm. So when I got into the 2-point sling and you saw it, you saw how the rifle actually just rested across, the sling just rested across my chest, and I was able to hold my rifle. I wasn't using any muscle, and I just took a breath, and then I reacquired my target by coming back up. So if you don't have a sling, you can actually work with just resting and take a couple of shots, take your trigger side hand off, and then just go back up and try it again.
So I'm getting some questions about, my club doesn't know what Project Mapleseed is. Are there courses offered near me? How do people go and find out about that?
So you can go to a couple of sites. You can go to our website, which is mapleseedrifleman.com, and you can check it out there. We're actually going to be putting up our lists of where we're going to be this year in 2021. But if you're interested and you actually would like to know if your club is hosting an event, or if you have a suggestion of a club, you can send us an email at info@mapleseedrifleman.com. You can also go to our Facebook page. We have an official Facebook page, which is Project Mapleseed, or you can go to our discussion page, which is the official discussion page of Project Mapleseed on Facebook as well. We also have an Instagram account. You can send us a message to there, Mapleseed Rifleman. And yeah, that's about it.
And if you are a student, we're going to have our clubs people reaching out to the clubs to see if we can run events in different places. We're going to see if we can run some in the spring. It's all dependent on COVID restrictions.
Right. So Cusf does organize events with us as well. So it'll get sent out to the specific clubs. You'll get links for there as well.
So I'm just going to redo this here. Okay, so Rick, outside of our CUSF events, we've been talking about CRPS, ORPS, all that, all the other types of competitions we have. Where would people go to learn about that? I just listened to your first Rimfire Nation podcast. You did a pretty big debrief on the types of competitions you offer.
Yeah, so if you guys we've just launched a podcast called Rimfire Nation, so it should be available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. So if you search Rimfire Nation, you should be able to find episode 1, which kind of goes through all of the different events and introduces the CRPS staff to the world. The reason for CRPS really is kind of where do people go after Project Mapleseed. So it is designed to be newbie friendly. And over the last 3 years, we worked very hard to make sure it's a welcoming, open, and inviting place where people can bring their kids and their spouses in and have a great time. So I don't know, Matt, if you found that at the events, are they newbie friendly?
Oh, 100%. That's where I started. My first match was an ORPS, and I think ORPS is a little bit more beginner friendly, but a CRPS match, I mean, it's it's really designed that if you, for example, don't have all the equipment or it's your first time shooting a match, there's so much support there, you really don't feel like you're being, at a disadvantage. And now the fact that you've introduced the loaner rifle program, you don't even need a rifle. you can borrow one for the match, and it's awesome. Yeah.
So that's the goal. So if you hear the term ORPS, so the Outlaw Rimfire Precision Series is really the short range version of the long range CRPS, and basically it's shot at 4 different distances: 25, 50, 75, and 100. So each stage will have targets placed somewhere in one of those 4 ranges, or a couple of those ranges, to test your ability to shift targets. There's always 5 stages, and again, you can bring pretty much any reliable rifle and any optic. Because the distances aren't that great, you can actually do holdovers. So 25, 50, you're going to use whatever zero you're shooting. Typically it's 50 or 25 yard zero. It'll work for both of those. Then all you need to know is how many target heights at 75 you have to hold, and how many target heights you have to hold at 100. So you don't even need to dial. So anything with a good clear optic is perfectly fine for it. And as long as it's reliable and a 22 long rifle, you'll be good to go. And if you're missing gear, guys are more than happy to lend you a bipod or a bag or even a rifle, as Matt said.
So I think the main message here is, like, if you have the slightest inkling of getting into competition, just do it. Dive in. It's intimidating to do, but if you want to do it, do it. If you don't want to do it, you should still do it, because it'll make you a better shooter.
Yep.
There you go. Yeah. So ORPS is that gateway event to trying it out and seeing if you like it.
Yeah. So there's different divisions, right? So we got production, open, youth, and
and we tell people not even think about that. We also have a stealth division that we added this year. It's not an ORPS. Is it an ORPS, Matt? Do you remember?
I don't think we added just CRPS is
CRPS. Yeah. So production typically is for any rifle that's below $500 US MSRP, and open is everything above that. And there's a $700 US MSRP limit on optics for production. Really, what we're trying to do is we're trying to keep the sporting rifles separate from the high end, typical precision build, so folks can kind of find their niche and settle into what feels right for them. And people say, well, this and that, just come out and shoot. Don't worry about what division, because I got news for you. You're not going to win. If this is your first competition, it doesn't matter. You're not going to win. Just come out, have a good time, learn, make some new friends, and decide whether that type of activity is right for you. And then all youth shooters, by the way, if you're under 18, by the end of the year, you shoot free at all of our events. So that's our goal to get more shooters. So all we ask is that if you are shooting as a youth shooter, that someone has registered and is responsible for you. We don't want people dropping off their kids as a daycare and just filling up squads with these kids. No idea.
So we got Aaron's comment. CRPS or ORPS participants are first class. They're very welcoming to new shooters. Doug again says, tell Rick that Doug at March Scopes says he has to give me one of those loaners with a March Scope for his next CRPS event. And Zach asks, are the competitions limited to bolt action rifles, or can semi-autos be used?
You can bring whatever you want. GSG 16s, we've seen them all. We even have Ed Sloboda. He won the last rifle we had, the Ruger competition. He shot with a single shot on shoots at our match in Tabor. So he just stood and delivered a single shot. So he did all right. He's an old silhouette shooter. So nice. He's pretty good. So it's whatever you want to bring, and then figure out what you want to change. You'll know quickly what works and what doesn't work, or you just have a good time. It's a good day. And there's many ways to enjoy.
I signed up for my first one and I can't wait.
It's pretty awesome. And then we are partnered with Cusf for ORPS matches this year. So we're going to be working directly with them to host ORPS matches across Canada.
Yeah, we're going to run that as a league for our shooters, so that they can get out every month and keep up their skills. So you'll hear more about that probably in the late summer. We're going to try and roll it out for the fall semester. Some other series, Northern Rimfire series, how does that? That's a little bit different than what you offer.
It's generally the same, but it's a little bit more, I guess, intimidating, in that it's patterned after the NRL
Fire, yeah.
Yeah.
center fire. It's more
More-
intense, I guess, is
more
a way to
skilled.
put it. More skills,
More skill.
but again, it's different. It's
Yeah.
different. It's the same but different. Is the easiest way to explain it.
And
And then you've
it's,
got a logo.
I was going to say it's only available here in Ontario though.
Correct.
And then DCRA. So Dominion of Canada Rifle Association. You've partnered with them. We don't really need to get into the nitty gritty of the partnership, but just for people who don't know what they do, what is it that DCRA does?
So DCR is one of the oldest rifle associations in Canada, and we're working with them to basically bring more competitions and more ways of instruction to their membership. So we'll be looking at hosting some events at Connaught Ranges this year for both Mapleseed and for the other things I can't say yet because it's still
Yeah.
pretty hush hush. So
But it's exciting.
it's going to be fun. It's going to be
So-
fun.
I've got one question. Do you absolutely have to have a scope? Have you seen any? Do you have an iron sight division? Have you seen anybody try and shoot with irons with the distances you're shooting?
It's all depends on your vision. If you can see 100 meters at a 6-inch target, you can shoot ORPS. It's probably challenging to the point of impossible to shoot a CRPS match with iron sights based on the fact that you have to hold dozens of feet above targets at the farther ranges. You could probably hit the up close ones, but it would be overly
It'd be a pretty big
taxing.
challenge.
Yeah, it'd be a pretty big challenge. But again, we've got our match rifle loaner program and mentorship allows you to take top-notch rifle off the shelf from ours and use it. All we ask is you either swap ammo with us or you provide a donation for the next guys.
Yeah.
So we've got a ton of sponsors that are providing. So we've got CZs, we've got Tika T1Xs, we have Voodoo's Rimxs, we've got IBI barrels, we've got Grey Birch Solutions actions, so it's a great way to test drive what you think you want or what you know you'll never buy or ever afford. If you want to spoil yourself.
You'll use it,
but
then you'll go spend a ton of money. Yeah.
Exactly. Or not.
Yeah, you will.
So what's your typical round count per stage?
Typically, so per stage, it's between 10 and 12. Some will go to 18. Usually so for a full match, it's about 150 rounds is a safe for a 1-day match, 10 stages. ORPS is probably 60 to 75, Matt. I think that's what they're averaging around. So
Yep.
5 stages, you look at 75 rounds. 10 stages, you're looking at 150. And then we've got 2-day regional championships which are a ton of fun. Those are 2 days, 10 stages each, 20 stage match, and a full weekend of bang, bang, pew, pew action.
So there are a bunch of other series. You have your Sniper series, Extreme Sniper series. Doug was mentioning that. I'd say check out the podcast if you want more details about that. But or the website, because you're running, Rimfire Race Guns, CRPS, ORPS, X22 Challenge. So there's a lot to pick from.
Rimfire Nation.
Yeah, Rimfire Nation. So typical magnification of the scopes that you see at these events.
So there's what we see and what we typically use, right? So a lot of guys will bring 4 to 16, 6 to 24, 5 to 25. Typically, if you ask any of the top shooters where they're at, they'll be between 10 to 14 power. So you really don't need more than that. What you're giving up when you've got high magnification is target identification or visibility. You get that tunnel, that's going to be harder to find. So we suggest, so at Mapleseed also, a 4-power scope. So fixed 4-power scope is all you need for a Mapleseed. That's what I shot Mapleseed with. That's what I qualified Rifleman with. It's a Marlin 795 with a fixed 4-power. You don't need a high test machine to make good groups at 25. So.
And one other question, X22, there is a division for bolt action.
So X22, just briefly touch on X22. X22 is a brand new series that we launched this year, specifically geared around the semi-auto. X22 stands for the 1022 platform and all the variants. What we do is we put long range, short range, up close steel, paper targets, and silhouette. So it's really kind of a multi-discipline top shot format. So we put you through all the paces, so it's not dominated by one style of shooting, but it's really provides the skills to shine through or to fall apart. And the divisions there are stock, which is a stock Ruger 1022 from the factory, however expensive that is. There's the open, which is modified 1022. There's the unlimited, which is a non-Ruger 1022 pattern. So those are all the Bergaras, those are the tactical solutions, the gray birches, all of those that take a 1022 mag. And then there's the Outlaw division, which is everything else. If it doesn't fit into any one of those other categories, it falls into Outlaw, but it must be 22 long rifle. So you can run a Ruger bolt action that takes 1022 mags, and that would be in Outlaw.
So lots of options if you want to compete,
Lots
I
of
guess is
options, yeah.
the answer, yes.
Correct.
So if you do want to compete or you want to attend a Mapleseed, Matt, what type of equipment would you need to do that?
Yeah, well, what Rick said before, he touched on it. Like, I wouldn't go out and buy a new rifle just in preparation for your first event. Take what you have. If you have a 22 LR, or you can even borrow one, that's probably fine for your first match. And you really don't need too much. You know, you can see the list here: rifle, mags, ammo. Mags, you probably want one at least to be a 10 rounder because of the 10 round stages. You don't want to have to, you know, reload your mag during a stage. Chamber flag, you don't have to worry too much because generally speaking, they'll provide you one if you don't have one in a match, but get used to using one because they're mandatory. And a scope, an optic, and a sling for Mapleseed again, and obviously your normal protection for eyes and ears.
So if you're going to go to the CRPS or RPS, what else do you need?
Yeah,
kind of as bare minimum.
Generally speaking, it's going to be the same gear, but you need a couple more items. Bipod for prone stages. You can also use bipod off certain barricades as well. So it's a nice item to have, although not critical. I wouldn't say. You can definitely shoot a match without a bipod, and some sort of a shooting bag for support. And a shooting bag can be used in many, many different ways. You can put it under your rifle on top of a barricade. You can use it as a rear bag for support. And you don't have to get anything fancy either. If you have, I hope you have socks at home. You can take a sock, fill it up with some rice or some sand, and, you know, just tie a knot. There you go. You got a shooting bag. And it actually works surprisingly well. The biggest thing is that it's malleable, right? So you can kind of adjust the shape and the fill as you need. And a sock filled with rice works great for your first event even. And then you can see what guys are running there in terms of rifles, optics, bags, and they can make a little bit more of an informed decision as to actually where to spend your money before, you know, trying to do that before you actually shoot a match. And then the last thing you need is obviously your dope, which is your drop data. And for ORPS, it's a little bit more beginner friendly because, again, you have your 50-yard zero. So really the only two numbers you have to memorize is your 75 and 100-yard drop data. But for CRPS, obviously, since the distances range anywhere between 25 to 400 plus yards, you're going to need a little bit more of a accessible dope on the flies. So something like a piece of tape on your arm or a piece of tape on your rifle. There's lots of tape at CRPS matches, but something that can tell you.
Painter's tape and a Sharpie.
Exactly, yeah.
And one thing about barricade bags, like I noticed you look up the ones that people use, they can get quite expensive. Matt, I think you have a video on how to make your own and different types of barricade bags. So again, check out Womfat YouTube channel. There's lots of information on that.
If you are looking to buy one, the best one is the Armageddon Gear Game Changer.
The mini Game Changer.
Yeah, they're about $100 at Bullseye North. If that's in your budget, I'd recommend getting that because you'll use it forever.
It's the game changer.
It's the game changer.
Yeah, that's a safe bet for sure.
Yeah.
So one thing we wanted to talk about, like I said at the beginning, our main goal from this webinar is to get people competing. And one thing that could be a challenge are, you know, the women out there, are they intimidated by competing at competitions with a whole bunch of men? So Kelly, what would you say to females who are thinking about competing?
Come out and do it. It's a lot of fun. It is so. From my perspective, women are natural shooters. They just absorb all the information, and they really like to put everything together, and they're just great natural shooters. They're really open to learning, as I said. Positional shooting is sometimes a little easier for a female compared to a male. We're a little bit, for some reason we're a little bit more flexible. I don't know. Anyways, so we can get into a few different positions as well, a little easier. Some of the challenges though that we do see are a couple of things. Upper body strength, we have a little bit less of it, or we tend to have a little bit less of it. So we do some things and we adjust it. So I will teach ladies and some men to actually, if you're doing offhand shooting, to use your body. And like I have a picture here of one of our shooters, and she's adapted more of an Olympic style shooting with standing, and also rifle fit. Now, Matt talked a little bit at the beginning of the webinar about his wife using a rifle and him actually using the rifle as well, and having to do the cheek adjustments and the length of pull adjustments, and that's exactly it. With women, we tend to have a smaller frame, or sometimes, some of us, not me, but some of us has smaller frames, so the length of pull is going to be a little bit shorter, and you might want to actually find maybe a youth stock or something like that, something that's a little bit lighter as well, or again, make those adjustments with the cheek risers as well as the length of pull, so that the rifle just basically fits you. So yeah, and the other thing is, competitive shooting, as I said, is lots of fun. Go out and do it. It's a level playing field, whether you're male, female. It's one of those, and yeah, just go out and do it. It'll be fun. Guys are actually great too, by the way. So if you go out and you're a female shooter, they're willing to help you out. And then you just outshoot them.
That's what happened to Matt, right?
Yeah, it hurts. But I brought Dory out to her first ORPS match, and she outshot. I can't remember the points, but she outshot me like significantly. And I was pretty proud, but sad at the same time. But yeah, it's a great time. I mean, she hasn't been shooting much in the winter because she's a fair weather shooter. But as Kelly mentioned, like, I feel like women can sometimes be better precision shooters almost naturally, because they're, guys tend to rush things and we can't settle down. We just gotta, do it fast, but they're a little bit more patient and methodical how they do stuff. So they're really good precision shooters. It's quite amazing. Yeah.
One question here from Jackie. Do you have adaptations for wheelchair users? I'd imagine that would be range specific.
Mm-hmm. And also course of fire as well.
Yep. So yeah, that can definitely be accommodated.
That applies to ORPS and CRPS as well.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So whenever you're looking for CRPS or ORPS, what types of things are you looking for, Matt?
So in terms of scope features, the most, I guess, common things to look for are, first off, make sure it's a first focal plane scope. If this is more for CRPS or ORPS, you can use a second focal plane. You can really use anything like what Rick mentioned, but not to get into the nitty gritty, but what that is for the end user is a first focal plane scope. The reticle will shrink and grow depending on what magnification you're using. So the indications on your reticle will always be accurate. It doesn't matter what magnification you're using. A second focal plane scope, the reticle stays the same size, and as you magnify your optic, if it has hash marks on it, you're not going to stay consistent. It's kind of tuned to one magnification. So making sure it's an FFP scope is nice, because you don't have to worry about what magnification you're using. If you want to see something a little bit closer, you can crank it up, still use your holdover is fine, and good to go. Target style reticles, target style reticles. I think it's on the next slide or a few slides from now, but basically, yeah, it's not just your simple crosshair. There's a lot of markings on it, which can look a little bit confusing when you first start, but some stages it's almost mandatory, or time crunch mandatory to hold over. So learning how to use those markings in a reticle is quite important as well. Dialable and exposed turrets, same thing with your drop compensation. You want to make sure you got something that you can kind of dial in. So something that looks like this, where it's not under a cap, it's fully exposed, and you can turn it to dial in your shot is important. And parallax adjustment, because the distances you're shooting vary greatly. Again, at CRPS matches more so, anywhere from 25 up to 400 yards. If your scope has a fixed parallax at 50 yards Anything beyond that is going to be pretty blurry, and you're going to introduce a lot of parallax error, which means if you don't have a perfect cheek weld behind your scope, any head movement is going to shift your reticle on your target, which means you're going to miss probably. So having the ability to dial in your parallax adjustment so that your reticle stays on your target, depending on your head movement, it's definitely beneficial.
So one thing people often get really confused about is parallax. One explanation I've heard is if you take a window and you put a mark on it, and then you put another window 100 meters away, put another mark on it, and you're standing behind it and you line it up so that both marks look like one. Well, if you take 3 steps to the left, your marks are not going to align, right? But if you take those 2 windows and you put them closer together and you put them on the same plane, it doesn't matter how much you move left or right, the 2 dots will align a lot more of the time. So really, the parallax is just getting your reticle and your target on the same plane.
Exactly. Yeah, within the scope, you're putting them on the same plane, so it doesn't matter where your head is; they're sticking together. If your parallax is off, you're going to introduce a shift in your reticle.
So somebody wants to enroll in the first match. Before you go to the match, you're going to have the I guess the stages published probably the day before, or for CRPS and ORPS, depending on when they run the stage, it's for the month, right? So you should have a plan going in, and then for each stage, what are you going to do to prepare before each stage to get ready to shoot it?
So any downtime I have before a stage, it's basically preparation time. So again, reading the stage description and knowing what barricades you're going to be shooting off of, if there's any transitions in it, and kind of having, again, sort of a game plan to how to approach it. Now, you don't want to get stuck in one mindset, because sometimes a barricade might be higher or taller than you think, and you're going to have to change your plan a little bit during the stage. But just a general idea of how you're going to approach to shoot it. Then knowing the target distances, they're going to be published unless it's a sniper series, but that's a different story. But knowing the target stages and then using your drop data to know exactly what shots you're going to have to make during a stage, and having that accessible to you if it's needed. At a CRPS match, again, just masking tape on your arm with the numbers written down works. Checking your turrets to make sure that they're dialed how you want them to be, and all your scope settings. Your lens caps, it's pretty funny. Lots of people start stages with closed lens caps, so just making sure they're open before you shoot a stage is pretty simple, but you'll be surprised how many people don't do that. And checking your magazine is loaded. This is something that happened to me a couple times when I first started these matches out. I'm running a stage, I'm doing really well, and then I go to take a shot and it goes click, and I think, oh crap, I forgot to load my mag. So now I lost, however many rounds I forgot to put in my mag. So basic things like that. It's good to have even a physical checklist when you first start, to make sure you don't forget anything, because there's lots of things to keep in mind, and as you do it more and more, it becomes second nature. But there's so much to think about. It's good to have a checklist to go through when you're doing your stage prep, and then don't panic is generally a good rule of thumb for these matches.
So once you're done the stage, I've heard that a lot of people tend to forget to dial their scope back to 0. That's one of the more common errors. So what are the things that if you have a checklist of what you want to do after your stage is done, what does that look like?
So it's funny, because I think every shooter has at least once forgot to dial back to 0. And what I mean by that is when your 50-yard 0 is obviously at 0, but if you dial the stage, especially with turrets like this, there's only 6 mils per revolution. So if you dial 8 mils, you're dialing past your 0 plus 2. So it looks like you're only at 2. If you don't dial all the way back down when it's still fresh in your mind, you might just dial back to the 0 and you're 6 mils off your 0, right? So if you start a stage like that, you're gonna miss everything. So make sure the first thing you do when you get off the line after shooting a stage is dial your turret back to 0, so you know exactly where you are in your turret elevation. As I mentioned before, load your magazine so you're not short rounds, and get prepared for the next stage. Learn from your mistakes, that's a big one. Some people, it's a lot of mental game, right? If you shoot a match or a stage poorly and you're kind of beating yourself over it, you're going to get tilted and you're going to probably shoot pretty poorly going forward. So just making sure that instead of having a negative outlook, saying, okay, what did I do wrong? How can I improve it. You know, maybe you forgot to dial for a shot. Okay, you have to be more mindful of what targets you're hitting, things like that. And again, staying positive is a huge part of the mental game in shooting these competitions. It's probably like 50% mental game and 50% actually shooting the stage, in my opinion. So
there are entire books dedicated to mental marksmanship.
yeah,
It's a really good one.
Yep.
We'll talk about those later. So one person asked, Zachary, large advantage using a zero stop scope. So I would imagine the answer is yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But what do you give up by using it?
So, well, really, there's different designs in zero stops. There's many different, you know, mechanical zero stops. Sometimes they limit your upwards travel, like the Strike Eagle here, although it's limited to 18 mils, so you still got a ton of travel. Really, a zero stop is always a win, right? But you're going to be paying a premium for scopes with zero stops, generally speaking. And depending on your price point, maybe you don't get a scope with a zero stop. And as long as, again, you have that mental checklist and you're making sure you know where your zero is all the time, you don't really need one per se. It helps, but it's not necessary.
Fair enough. So now we're going to do a draw for some swag bags. I got 5 to give away. It'll include Beretta hats, lanyards, CUSF stickers, CUSF patches. I'm going to do the same thing as we did last time, 5 random numbers. First one, 79. Matt, you can't win again. Sean Brown over here. Sean Brown is not here, so we'll go to the next one. 83. Aaron Rodriguez. I see him. Yes, he is here, so he gets
Aaron.
a swag bag. Okay, we'll do another one here. 77. Burned. Let's see here. I thought I saw him earlier. Yep, he's here, so he gets one. $54. Kurt.
Nope, Sean.
He's not here. Oh, too tough for him, I guess. Eh?
54 is Sean, no?
Oh, did I do that wrong? Oh, sorry, Sean Fisher. Yeah, I'll try that. Thanks for that, Rick. He's not here either. Next is 50. Brian Rooney. Lots of absentees. He's not here either. So we need to try and find 3 more people. 45. Samuel Alexander. He is here. All right. 45. 2 more. 52. Lots of close numbers. Riley Williams.
Nope. Andre.
Andre, sorry. I'm glad that I have the checker. Andre.
Pull mine up. Can't see.
Is that 52? He is here, so that's good. And one more. 64. Mr. Sweet Apple. I don't know who he is. There's no way of checking that. Let's see here, Sweet Apple. He is here. All right. So Mr. Sweet Apple gets a swag bag. So for everybody who's won, I have everybody's email addresses, and I will be in touch to get some information on how to get that to you. So we're running a little bit late. We'll go till 10. And if we're not done, the information by 10 will just move right to the giveaway. So next, we'll try and go through this pretty quick. Whenever you're talking about optics, lots of people mention minute of angle. So Rick, if you had to describe to somebody what is a minute of angle, how would you tell that to them?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically what unit of measure you're using to measure the elevation adjustment that you're dialing into your scope.
Yeah.
So if you want
So
if you want the more precise one, you've got the circle divided into 360 degrees, and a degree is divided into 60 segments called in minutes. So each degree has 60 minutes. And then as you extend that cone out, it gets the impact of moving 1 minute of angle gets larger and larger the farther out you go.
yeah, so at 100 yards, you're approximately 1 inch. 200 yards, 1 minute of angle is 2 inches. So because it's angular, as the distance gets larger, the distance of 1 minute of angle gets larger. Yep. So the other unit of measure that's used is mils, just kind of different unit of measurement based off radians, but same concept, right? So we don't need to get too much into the math of it, but it seems like more and more people are using mils, right?
Yeah, I would say at matches, probably 80 to 90% of people are using mils or MRAD or milliradians, whatever you want to call it. But again, there's no wrong answer. MOA and mils measure the same thing, just differently, and use whatever you're comfortable with and whatever your friends shoot. Is generally what
That's the most important thing. What are your friends using? Because you're going to say, how much wind did you hold?
Yeah.
And you guys need to be speaking the same language.
Yeah.
And you also need to trust your friend.
Yeah,
Doug says
exactly.
Doug says after I win that tangent data scope from CRPS fundraiser, I won't have to worry about revolutions or elevations.
That's right, Doug.
Yeah.
So again, mils, you're looking at 10 centimeters at 100 meters, 20 centimeters at 200. So same theory. It gets larger with distance, but it's still 1 mil.
Right.
Earlier we talked about reticles, and for new shooters, the picture on the right is the Christmas tree reticle that Matt had talked about. So whenever you see that, it can be pretty intimidating. What if you had to look at 3 things to point out to a new shooter using a reticle like this, Matt? What would you tell them to focus on?
Well, first off, if you dial in your shot, so you're actually using that elevation turn and dialing in, the only thing you need to look at is the center crosser. You can ignore everything else. However, it's all the markings are there if you're using holdovers. So at the bottom, you can see it kind of flares out. That's why it's called a Christmas tree. And if you're going to hold over instead of dial, essentially what these markings are doing is it's replacing your dialing into the turret. So this is the Ebr2c Reticle. This is actually the reticle in the scope that someone can win tonight, which is pretty cool. And it's a great reticle. I use this for almost 6 months. And this one is an MOA, but it's the same in mils, just the numbers will be different. So let's say, I think the second line at the bottom there is 8. So that's your 8 MOA marking. So if you have a target at, that's about, I guess, 110 yards, let's call it. Instead of dialing 8 MOA into your scope, you can just use your reticle, cant your gun up slightly till your target is on that 8 MOA mark, send it, you're gonna hit it. So it's pretty cool. And obviously the flaring to the side is for your wind holds. So depending on how much wind there is, you're gonna have to adjust both your elevation and your horizontal adjustment. And it's basically that simple. There's a lot of different styles in reticles, the markings. It's a lot of personal preference as well. I'm a big fan of the Vortex reticles, to be honest. And again, I use this one for quite some time. It's very, very good. Yeah.
One thing that I've thought about a lot, Rick had mentioned earlier, most shooters are shooting in that kind of 8 to 12, 14 times magnification zone. Vortex has 2 scopes. I got the 4 to 16 by 44. You got 20 more MOA of internal adjustment on that. You're sacrificing magnification versus your 6 to 24, you have 65 MOA of internal adjustment. So is there an advantage to having more internal adjustment versus magnification?
It all depends on what you want to do with your rifle. Generally speaking, obviously it's a trade-off like what you just said. I personally started with the 6 to 24 by 50 when I bought my Diamondback Tactical. And on the next slide, I'll get into this, but using a canted scope base is a way to kind of cheat the system and get as much elevation adjustment out of your scope as possible. So we'll touch on that, yeah, right there, right? So in rimfire, especially since you have to dial a lot, given the distances we're shooting at, and if you're going to be shooting a CRPS or ORPS match, you really don't need the magnification above 16 times. It might be nice once in a while if you're shooting paper or really small targets. But I would personally now go towards a scope that has more elevation adjustment. But again, it's a lot of personal preference. And this slide you pulled up here on canted scope bases is exactly that. So you can see the first image there with the level scope. Your elevation adjustment is like a cone, right? It's your angular elevation adjustment available in the scope. And if you're zeroed at 50, well, you only have about, let's say, half of that adjustment to use. If you put it onto a canted or tapered scope base, you're physically canting the scope downwards in relation to your gun in order to have a zero closer to the top of that elevation so that you can dial much more given, you know, the same scope. So I have an example here. This is a canted scope base. I'm not sure how well you can see that, but this one is a 55 MOA scope base. So it's just shy of 1 degree in cant. And that's exactly what you would put on a rifle. You stick this on top, you put a scope on top of it, and now instead of being level, it's going to be canted down slightly to give you a little bit more elevation adjustment in your scope. It's basically how it works.
So Matthew has a question. With the 30 MOA rail, will it compensate for the adjustment you give up for magnification? And the answer is yes to that, right? So you're using more of that magnification with the 30 MOA, or the adjustment range with the 30 MOA rail.
Yeah.
And one other thing I wanted to mention on this slide, I stole this picture from Precision Rifle Blog. They do a lot of evaluation of PRS shooting more down in the States, but they use a lot of statistics. They evaluate what all the pros use. There's a lot of really good information on that website. All right, moving on. Dope. Rick, if you had to explain dope to somebody, what would that be?
So dope is data obtained on previous engagements. Basically, it's the history of how you've tracked your bullet drop at various distances. So it's your historical evidence of if I'm using this specific lot of ammo, and it's important to understand that ammo is made in batches, and from batch to batch you can get some differences. So that's the first thing. So like CCI standard velocity is a great starting point, right? So I'll shoot it at 50 and I'll zero at 50. If I have the opportunity to shoot longer distances, that's how you're going to get dope or data obtained on previous engagements. So what's the drop at 100? So I'll aim for the bullseye and then I'll measure exactly where it hits below where my point of aim was. So the difference between point of aim and point of impact is your bullet drop. If you have access to 200-yard ranges, you'll do that. If you have 300 yards, you'll do that again. You'll shoot 10-round groups. If you don't have access to it, then you're going to need a couple of things. A ballistic calculator, which is basically just a mathematical formula where you'll enter how efficient your bullet is traveling through air, and it's also its muzzle velocity. Each box will have a general muzzle velocity. Yeah, but that's a good starting point. Typically, I always say zero the rifle at 50 yards or 50 meters, whatever unit of measure you're using, and then try and plot your bullet drops as it goes down range, 50, 100, 200, 300 if you can. If you only got 100, then calculate a 100 and then fill that into what a ballistic calculator would match up. All you're trying to do is understand roughly where it's falling at each of the distances. So for ORPS, typically you'll be able to get a pretty good set of dope for ORPS because most ranges will go out to 100 yards, right? So just measure it, shoot 10-round groups, and then measure it. And that's your cheat sheet. So every match, if you're shooting at 75, you know exactly how many inches you're going to have to hold over or dial up.
And you can see in the picture, Matt prepared for his stage ahead of time, right? So those are all the adjustments he's going to make on the different targets that he's shooting at that particular stage.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
That
That
was
was
from the dope.
Yeah, so that's an example. Oh, sorry, Rick.
Yeah, so it's a little bit more difficult for CRPS because you have intermediate distances. We don't have the 25-yard step in CRPS. It'll be all over the place.
So there's a couple ways to get it. You mentioned go out and shoot and measure it. You can also use ballistic calculators. So what are a few of them that we know about, Matt?
So the most simple one, if you don't have a cell phone, it would be to go to JBM Ballistics. It's a simple website, and it works pretty well. Essentially, you plug in some variables, which I think we'll show in a couple slides, and it'll print you out basically a chart. You can choose the min, max distances, and the increments in between. And you can even just print out a physical chart, bring it along with you, and you can get pretty close. It's also important to remember that at CRPS and ORPS matches, the targets are not tiny. Like, this isn't bench rush shooting. It's more about the shooter and their ability to get stable on barricades. So your dope does not have to be perfect. It can be pretty darn good, and you can still get a lot of hits. So I use JBM ballistics for a little bit. There's some good free phone apps like the Hornady 40OF and Lapua. I've used both of those. And again, some ammo will have their BC ballistics coefficient as well as the bullet weight on the box, and you can plug those into those apps and get very, very close. I've kind of upgraded now to Straylock, and it's worked really nicely. The reason why I like to use this now is because it has a really good truing function, and I feel like the adjustments it does to my velocities based on temperature is also a little bit more accurate. So that's the reason why I paid for it. And if you think about it, people spend thousands or whatever, hundreds on their rifle, hundreds on their scope, but they're not willing to pay $10 for a ballistics app that will get you on target. So it's worth it, in my opinion. It's worth it. And then you got the really Gucci devices like your Kestrels, obviously, which can cost a substantial more amount of money, but they're going to have some pretty cool custom drag coefficients, and they're also a built-in weather station, so you don't have to plug in your own data. You can kind of hold it up, get your wind reading, and go from there. So they're pretty cool.
I mentioned JBM. This is essentially what it looks like whenever you go to the JBM website. So,
yep. So most calculators are going to have those basic things to plug in, your bullet weight, your BC, which is a little, you can kind of tune to it. A lot of BC stated on boxes, by the way, are maybe a little bit overstated. So I usually drop the number by a little bit. And then that chart, which I was talking to you about, is in the middle. So this is kind of what you can expect in terms of output, and you can bring that along with you to a match and do pretty well. And then just to touch on truing briefly, if you notice that your calculator is telling you to hold 17 mils at 300, but you really have to dial 18, you can plug that into some calculators and it'll true your entire trajectory curve to be a little bit more accurate to what you're actually seeing in real life.
And I mean, we could do an entire webinar just on this, so we're just scratching the surface.
Yeah.
Of this. All right, we're moving right along now. So if you're a shooter, you're competing in competitions and you want to get to the next level, or you want to improve your shooting, what are the best ways to do that, if you had to say, Kelly?
Well, my first thing that I would say is get some training. So come to a Project Mapleseed event and get the fundamentals under you, and then you can actually move forward with other things like you can find out how to learn to basically read the wind, because it really is an art form, as it says here. But once you're able to do that, then you're able to make some adjustments just by even looking at the wind and the leaves. And one of the biggest things is don't let it get to you in your head. Mental marksmanship. So you've been holding up. Were you just holding up the book on it?
I was holding up the wind book.
Okay. So yeah, there's some great books that are out there on right now, and they're actually they're like Mental Marksmanship is actually written by a couple of people here in Canada. Fantastic books. Don't stay positive, as Matt keeps saying. Have fun. If it's not fun, why the heck are you doing that? Like, really, come on, shooting should be fun. So come out, have fun, and yeah, that's about it. So try it out. Try out ORPS, CRPS, do the race gun series, then go and even go out and do some of the larger caliber as well, because yeah, it's lots of fun.
All right, so the moment everybody's been waiting for, I'm sure, the Vortex scope giveaway. So again, to win this prize, you have to be a CUSF member prior to 9 o'clock. So if you're going right now, you're 39 minutes late. And I'll need to have some proof that you were a member before 9 o'clock. If I draw your name and you're not a member, I guess we'll do like a YouTube draw after, because there's no way to check it right now. You have to attend the webinar, so you got to be here, and you have to reside in Canada. So again, I'd like to thank Vortex for supporting us. They support Project Mapleseed and CRPS. They're fantastic industry partners. Their products are fantastic. They have a warranty that they stand behind, and you really can't recommend them highly enough. And we thank them very much for supporting us. So we'll get our random number generator. Rick, you need to check that I select the right number, eh? Okay, let's see here.
This scope is awesome, by the way. I'm like jealous of whoever's going to get it.
Yeah. So 3, 2, 1. Random number is 55. Kurt. I wonder if Kurt's here.
Kurt Vandervoort.
Let's see here. Kurt is not here.
Oh, Kurt.
So it continues.
Kurt, ouch. Sorry, buddy.
All right. We will try again. Random number 15.
Ooh, early bird.
We got Darren Love. I wonder if Darren's here. Darren is not here.
Oh.
Oh, think about. All right, we will try this. Third time's a charm, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
57.
57. We're stuck in the 50s here.
I know.
Yeah. No.
Oh, Vince
Vince.
Velasco.
Vince is here.
Congratulations,
Oh.
Vince.
Congratulations.
Vince.
Congratulations to Vince. I'll reach out to you.
Gonna go on a CRPS rifle.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll reach out to you and I'll get in touch. We'll have to get in touch with Vortex. You can tell me if you want a mill or an MOA, and we'll have them ship it directly to you.
Nice.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that is fantastic. Save that. Okay. Again, I just wanted to mention our sponsors, Cabela's Outdoors Fund. Whenever you go to Cabela's and they ask you to round up to the next dollar, the money that they collect for that goes to support organizations like us. So I'll ask you, definitely round up. They've been a fantastic help. They support the people who support us, and their interest is in getting new shooters out. Again, Vortex, can't thank them enough. I'm sure that Vince is very happy as well. So thank you, Vortex, for supporting us, for supporting Mapleseed and CRPS. Stittsville Shooting Ranges, they help our clubs in Ottawa. We have 3 there, Carleton, Algonquin, and Ottawa U, and our members go out shooting there, and they host the Mapleseed events. And Beretta, again, offer fantastic products, pistols and shotguns. They're happy to help us. They sponsored some of the swag bags that we gave away today, and we thank them very much for supporting us. I want to thank Kelly, Rick, and Matt for their time tonight. They've been fantastic. The knowledge base that's here is incredible, and we thank them for sharing their time with us, because the time is super valuable. And we want to get some feedback. So anything that you want to tell us about, you can email webinars@cusf.ca. Any future topics you'd like to see, we'd like to try and make this series into a once a month event. So we're going to be going with this. What did you like, or what didn't you like? I'm open to hearing both positive and negative about this event. Just be nice. And any other suggestions that you have. So I'd love to hear from you. I think that the software we have sends out emails automatically for feedback, but if you want to send something more personal, go to the webinars@cusf.ca. And also thank you to the attendees for tonight. It wouldn't happen without you. We'd have nobody to give stuff to and nobody to present to. So thank you for taking the time tonight to talk about rimfire rifles with us. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks.
Thank you.